Okay, welcome ladies on the stage to talk about the trade and gender and BIMSTEC. Okay, the floor is your assistant professor, Serena Zemchi.
So thank you very much. So welcome to session 5. The topic gonna be on trade, gender, and BIMSTEC. For today's session, is our honor to have 4 speakers, 3 with us and 1 online. So let me introduce our honor speaker here. The first speaker gonna give the special remark, Ms. Nadita Baru, country representative, the Asia Foundation, India. And sitting here with us, we have 3 more speakers here. First, we have Dr. Vitada Anukun Watana, Economic Affairs Officer, Trade Policy and Facilitation Section, UNS CAP Bangkok, Thailand. Welcome. Thank you. And next, we have Ms. Salima Ahmed, President, Bangladesh Women Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Dhaka, Bangladesh. Welcome. And we also have Ms. Chering Shoki, Director, Antang Training Academy and CEO, Antang Learning Institute, Thimphu, Bhutan. Welcome here. So let's come to our topic here. We talk about we talking about BIMSTEC from many dimensions, and today we're gonna look closer into dimension that we have seen the development so far in terms of the improvement. Gender issues is always one on the table, and what is the situation right now in BIMSTEC country? We have seen the improvement in terms of women empowering over the past year. We see evident in terms of women participation in labor market, improve in education, and also participation in the decision-making level. We can see about the director or the CEO in many companies that the share of women keep increasing, but the gap is still there. So for today's session, we're gonna see more how each of our speaker see this kind of situation. I think for the starting, how do we set our discussion here today? I think for the general one, when we talk about the issues, we have to first think about where we are. So there are many index, for example, like Gender Inequality Index from UNDP. And another one is the Global Gender Gap Index or GGGI from World Economic Forum. These 2 indexes data from the country around like 180 or 90 country around the world. The data show up this way. More than half of BIMSTEC country, the ranking is below 100. So it means that this is where we are. We may want to look closer. How can we do it? The next question we go to like, okay, we know where we are. Where do we want to be? The equality, the best practice. So we want to see like finish line in a way, how far we move from here to there. And the most important one, how do we get there? So that's why we have our honor speaker here to see from the policy level, from the business level, and also to the practitioner level. And I think one more thing we have to look closer as well, because we passed the COVID-19 pandemic. When the COVID come, this section, the women as an entrepreneur, they kind of like get the effect more than the general business. So this is the add-on to our story. And when we talk about BIMSTEC in terms of trade and industry, I think it's worth it to mention about 3 groups specifically. The first one is the ready-made garment industry. So we know that a lot of women work in that industry. Another one is the tourism one. So when the COVID come, we cannot travel, and those business get a lot of impact, and also for sure to the female worker. And last but not least, also in terms of the small and medium-sized enterprise, because for the women entrepreneur, they kind of like if they start their own business, many of them are in the small side for something like that. So I think this is how we can see the story from here today. To start, I think we will get each presentation around 8 minutes, and then we can open for discussion and also including the special remark. So for this one, why don't I invite the first speaker? May I invite Dr. Vitada to start your presentation, please?
Thank you very much. My presentation is not going to be that, right? It's okay. Thank you for having me here. I'm Vitada from SCAP. I'm economist in trade division. So my focus today will be about gender gaps in trade, but I will focus on the new trade model because we are talking about new world order, right? So we should bring new perspective as well. By new trade model, I'm talking about now we have something. Uh, the new trade model that I'm referring to is about digital. Now, you may aware that more and more trade transaction is at least order online, and the other part is even go further into deliver online in digital formats, and that's changed the perspective of trade, both in a good way and bad way to women. In a good way, statistics shows clearly that with online opportunities, women has been able to access global markets better through e-commerce platform, e-marketplace, or just advertisements on social medias. But in the other way, with online platforms, online economies, gender gaps is enlarged. And that's not purely because of digital, but it is a result of pre-existing gap that having between men and women. Women by nature, women enterprise by nature, it is smaller than men. This is the average numbers, smaller firm. And many of them are in the informal sectors. So that is the barriers that already there even before online world. Educations which affect their skills, right? Digital skills require English language at the minimum, and then the skills that advance enough to operate digital tools. The statistic is also clear that women have less education than men. Although the decrease is different, the severity of gaps is different between South Asians or East Asians or developed countries. But on average, everyone, even OECD countries, this characteristic state. So that cause women face greater challenge than men when they have to get start business. In the old world, this is already true. Many studies has come out. And in the new trade formats, this also shows even stronger because first they have less equipment. In these figures, 72% less likely of women are going to own smartphones. And we know that in Asia, we're using smartphone for running, not just shopping, but also selling online, especially if you are a small business. Women are about 28% less likely to get funding for their online business. And once they operate online, women firms on average earn less than men's online firms, even if they're selling on the same products. So for the average, $1 that men earns online, women got 80 cents. If products are exactly the same, women earn 97 cents when men earn $1. So there is real gaps even in the online world, which enlarge opportunities for women. Literacy, internet literacy for women is much lower than men because of education background, education opportunities, right? This is so sad because when we moving to another criteria for the same opportunity that men and women got in learning digital skills, the test results shows that women operate, perform better than men, use the digital tools more effectively. So that's gaps we found in the data from the survey. Then my second point is that for a policy point of view, when we create a policy proposals or legislative proposals, we need to consider impact of genders in a more comprehensive way. Most of the research in policies rather focus on either impacts of women as a worker or to some extent as the entrepreneur without thinking about whether it is upstream entrepreneur, downstream entrepreneurs, or small entrepreneurs or large entrepreneurs, because effects are different. And women are not just workers or entrepreneurs, they are also consumers. So any policy that is going to hurt women is not just the policies that affect in terms of working, worker, or business, but also policies that affect price of the products, especially some products that women tend to be consume more. For example, health products or educational service, which women really needs to boost up, right? And now with the new world patterns of trade, where everything is moving online. So it's mean when you think about impacts on women in terms of workers, you have to think about online workers, which many women are freelance. Women need flexibilities. Many people have to taking care household issues, so they become informal worker, freelance workers. Labor policies need to be broadened to protect that gig economy workers. In terms of consumers, many products are online. And then consumer protection, online consumer protection has to be well crafted and effectively implemented. We have consumer protection laws in many countries. Some countries maybe not so effective. But are we thinking about how that needs to change when it's come to online products, online transactions, online how you are going to protect consumers when dispute with online traders, so online dispute settlements, because women using a lot more online platform in their selling or buying things, so they will be exposing to the risks of online dispute more often than men. In terms of entrepreneurs, as I mentioned, the study shows women are very actively to become online sellers if they have chance. Many of them are not educated enough to become on Amazon or well-established platforms, but they sell things on TikTok, Facebook. Some countries have policies that they are going to ban TikTok sales. They are going to ban Facebook sales because of revenue concern, tax revenue concerns. But I didn't say that it is a bad policy because everything has good and bad. But you may need to consider the impacts on women if you put women at the centers of the policy considerations, right? And then create a mechanism to balance or mitigate those impacts. So that's the example. In general, trade policies has gender bias, intention or unintentional. That is gender bias. We have industrial protectionisms, right? And many industry are more of male dominate industry. In the old days, that's heavy industry, cars, chemicals, computers, mining, that's all male dominate industry. So when you protect, it means you give incentive, resource will be there. So sectors that operate and in favor of men will be get boost when sectors that not male dominate by you may not intend to be, but resource will be drawing out of it, crowding out of it. But now there is also new industry, right? Many countries have policy to have data centers, to become semiconductors, to make to do digital tech industries. And many policies come out as service trade resistance, which is related to domestic regulations. A consequence is because women do a lot of online business at the downstreams. So they need to use digital service as their input for productivity. They need efficient platforms, online platforms. They need safe, secure, and high quality internet service. They need analytical algorithms that efficient in targeting the market that they have to sell their products, right? Good analytics service. All these digital service, which may not be available at the competitive or high quality level by domestic provider. Domestic service provider may not provide that efficient level or safe and secure level of digital service. But when there are policies like tariff on digital transmission, for example, or policies that block data transfer, this add cost of digital service and make less incentive for foreign investments to invest in the country, especially if they are not a big market. So in a way, it would cause high cost for women who have to use that digital service for their input of their business to improve productivity. Policies like weak competition policies or complex business regulations. This is a usual barriers for firms with small size because this kind of complex policies are complex process for documentation or not having proper interventions when there are predatory pricings hurts especially small firms. And this also happens a lot in online firms. So when women, as I mentioned before, that women are smaller in terms of size, they will be affected by policies that hurting micro and small business. And I already mentioned about consumer protection, which we have to consider online dispute settlements or issues about safety, online privacy, because that is exports women a lot in the new world. In terms of what we can do, in general, the recommendation would be we need to have a thorough impact analysis. We need to conduct impact analysis of policies and regulations when taking gender considerations. And that policies as I mentioned, it has to be broad in terms of scope because we need to consider multiple roles of women, not just workers or consumers, but also entrepreneurs. We can use provisions in RTAs to support and make government have to commit to gender considerations. But so far, RTA that have gender focus in the provision is still very vague and not go much beyond sharing best practice. So binding commitments to have capacity building, to have more concrete incentives such as aid for gender inclusiveness or preferential treatments that related to market access of women enterprise, something like that might be considered to add more incentive. But I would say inclusive trade is not just about women. There is also issues of minorities, like different class, different race, different ethnic, different size of firm. All this has to be considered if we care about inclusive policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vichada, that we can see an overview and also the comprehensive picture about how can we improve in terms of the role of women in terms of entrepreneurship and also in the terms of the new kind of trade, digital trade on the platform. I think three main points that Dr. Vichada has already mentioned. First, comprehensive in terms of role, starting from consumer, worker, or being entrepreneur. And also in terms of process of improving the human capital, maybe start from education and also include the training. The second point, I think we have to aware of diversity in terms of the business can be online, on-site, small site, medium or large, and also the upstream or downstream. They may need different kind of help. And up to date is what we need as well because the business keep changing very fast. And that can be the inclusiveness that can enhance not only the how to say, we have a worker, we have labor force participation, and women is one force that can be like, how to say, add on, and we can improve together. Thank you very much. Let's move on to our second speaker, Ms. Selima. May I? Yes, please.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Assalamu alaikum to all. Yesterday, I was thinking, seeing all the eminent panelists and the participants, that why I'm here. I'm not an economist. I'm not a, some position holding in the universities, but I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a business leader, and I'm also try to see that policies come as a lawmaker and as a politician. So for me, it's very important when I was an exporter to see that my product can move from my country to another country. For me, it's very important when, as a president of Bangladesh Women Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to see that the women entrepreneurs from one country to another country can go visit, promote their products, sell their products, and can increase their production and make profit. For me, as a policymaker and working in my own constituency, would like to see that the equality between men and women, and how we can bring equality between men and women. It is through a democratic process, and that democratic process ultimately lies on the capacity building and the policies which can enhance the women's economic empowerment. So when we talk about the trade policies, we talk about promoting gender equality and their practices. I first definitely would like to thank Sanim to bringing this topic, although today is the last day, but not least. gender, of course, is a key factor in the complex relationship between trade growth and development. So how we can reduce the gender gaps, and that makes, because why we want to do it, because that makes a good economic sense. And advancing, when we want to advance and we want to aim women's economic empowerment, there is always a need of policy action, and also would like to see that because of the policy action, the increased participation of women entrepreneurs increases in international trade. So whenever we are talking about policies, ministers meet, the economists meet, the academia are meeting, the government officials are meeting and talking to another countries when they are having agreements, whether they assess the capacity, or they have the look at the gender dimensions of trade policies through country case studies, because that is very important. Because and for that we need to support the developing countries, because when we are having in negotiations, when we are doing some trade policies, each country has unique case studies, and policymakers, so when they're having that trade negotiations, need to go through that case studies and have their policies. We need to have a sound and reliable data to evaluate the gendered impacts of different trade measures and instruments. And how much we gathered the evidence on possible trade and other complementary policies which enable women to benefit from trade or to reduce the negative impacts that trade may have on them. I remember I was doing a project where I was assessing cross-border trade between Myanmar, between India, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Bhutan. And I remember I went to the Benapol border and Petropol border, and I found there was toilet, but there was no toilet for women. And when women entrepreneurs are crossing borders, many Bangladeshi women entrepreneurs were participating in Kolkata trade fairs. And they used to say that when they were taking the product in the bus, it was a night bus journey. And then when they're landing in the border, in the customs areas, the harassment was there. Apart from there was no toilet for them. So it might be silly for you men, but for us, it's important. For only for that reason, many women was reluctant to go through buses, and flying by air was sometimes for the small entrepreneurs was expensive. So these are small things, but the good news is that when we do advocacy, now there is a toilet for women. So things also happen, but we need to see from the very gender sensitive lenses. So when there are national and regional efforts to increase coherence among different but interlinked policies such as trade, development, employment, migration, and gender equality, so there has to be a fund, because whenever you are talking about bringing policies, whenever you are talking about building the capacity of the policymakers or the academia or the economists or the entrepreneurs, funds are always important. And because of lack of resources, sometimes these are not talked up, and sometimes our issues are missed up. We had a SARC Women Entrepreneur Council, still it's there, but SARC countries, SARC government is not working. So when I was an executive committee member, I was a vice chair of the SARC Women Entrepreneur Council. It was happening that when we were having meeting, when it was in Pakistan, Indian can't go, Bangladesh can't go. So we have to choose either in Nepal or Sri Lanka, which was more visa friendly, or everyone is would be able to go and participate. So even within the SARC region, the access to travel was a hindrance. It was always difficult when you have these sort of issues. But that's why I think BIMSTEC has a really big opportunities for women entrepreneurs, because these visa issues and the movement issues are much more liberal. So, do we support the advocacy platforms? Do we support women informal traders? There are border huts, and lots of small entrepreneurs participate in there. But when we are on the negotiation table, do we think about those women entrepreneurs? Do we see how these women entrepreneurs can be more benefited? In the border hut areas, when they sit, the women entrepreneurs, sometimes one day they are sitting and next day another person is sitting. So she doesn't know the stability of her business is also not there. So these certain things need to be documented. The policymakers need to have rules and regulations for the informal or formal women entrepreneurs when they are sitting or doing cross-border trade. So we need to support the inclusion of gender considerations into multilateral development cooperation frameworks. And we need to develop specific training program for women entrepreneurs to enhance their participation in world trade. How many women entrepreneurs of this region knows about export thing? When sometimes I do remember I was with my members in Singapore, and Mustafa is a big chain, and they wanted to have order, and she has beautiful product. But when the man was asking how much weight it will be in a container, what is the CNF, what rate, what will be the FOB rate, and she was coming and running to me, what is the FOB, what is CNF? So I don't blame her. A woman who has never traveled has a beautiful product, which has opportunity to be in another country. So she has a product. But if her capacity could be built to know that what is CNF, what is FOB, what will be a size of a container, and how much product in each container your product will be fitted, now, what will be the weight of each of your product, then she'll be able to negotiate. She'll be able to inform her buyer. So when we'd like to see more export or trade between countries to countries for women entrepreneurs, the capacity building is important. So ultimately, when we would like to see participation and women's empowerment, we need to support broad-based effective participation of women and women's group in trade consultations and negotiations, as well as in trade policy making and related implementation, because this is very important. When there are negotiations, actually the ministers or the lawmakers forget always about the gender perspective. They are doing trade negotiations just thinking as a trade negotiator. And so we need to facilitate the exchange of views and experiences among women engaged in trade negotiations and policy formulation and implementation. We need to facilitate contacts, coaching and sharing of experiences among women entrepreneurs. That is also very important, because each BIMSTEC countries has unique experiences of women entrepreneurs. We need to share, because like today, if we could share all country-specific experiences, then it would have been much more richer and much more effective. So we need to facilitate the linkages between women-owned and micro and small enterprises and larger national or multinational firms. So how we way forward? So we need to include gender perspectives in trade policies. So it has to be, whenever there are trade policies, we need to see from a gender lens, and we need to see that the related agreements which are essential element that it is from the gender perspective of an integrated development policy framework which combines social and economic measures to ensure fairer and beneficial outcomes for all. So I'd like to conclude that different policy measures in trade and other areas of economics provide specific entry points to mainstream gender issues in international trade. So specific instruments include trade liberalization agreements. And when we see unilateral reduction of tariffs and intermediate inputs in productive sectors with high female employment, tax incentives. So we would always, we are lobbying to encourage exports from women-owned enterprises. And if these women entrepreneurs can get special tax incentives, then they will be more encouraged to export between the countries. And multilateral development assistance frameworks, such as Aid for Trade. So ultimately, I would like to conclude that in each agreement, each dialogue, especially when the BIMSTEC countries are meeting together, the high officials are coming, all academia, economics, the policymakers, the ministers, government officials need to negotiate, need to have a dialogue, need to conclude their decision through a gender lens, and to see that ultimately whatever they decide, it brings benefit for the development of men and women, because ultimately this world is not only for men, this world is for human beings, and these human beings are men and women. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Salima. I think it's a very good opportunity that we hear from the private sector herself. And she mentioned very important point here about gender perspective in trade policy, what they really need in terms of the tax incentive. Also go down into the practical level about the capacity building, coaching, and sharing the experience. So the picture, we see a lot more from this, from your talk. Thank you very much. Let me move on to the next speaker. May I invite Ms. Shering, please? Thank you very much. You may have around 7 to 8 minutes. Sorry about that.
Thank you. It has been quite enriching to listen to Dr. Vichara and Ms. Salima, because it kind of reminds me of the time during the COVID when everybody was realizing about the digital divide, on especially the between the rural and urban, and also how where the at the backdrop how the women were going through so much. And I also was a part of I was engaged in a small assignment with one of the the gender organization in Bhutan, where they wanted me to come up with the market analysis and a business plan for establishing a social enterprise for disadvantaged women in Bhutan. What I'm going to share here is based mostly on the Bhutan perspective, and what I do. What I had been doing for the last 20 years, the kind of work that I do has mostly been in tourism, where I really work at the grassroots level with women being part of the community that caters a lot of services in tourism sector. And what I do now as a part of my institution is I also work a lot with young people, and mostly in the IT sector as well. So I think there are a lot of dynamics in what I've been learning so far. And from the perspective of what I'm going to share, like in Bhutan, is gender and trade in Bhutan. Like it's really it's deeply intertwined. Like it reflects the broader socioeconomic landscape of our country. The legal frameworks in Bhutan, like we treat men and women equally, safeguarding women's rights. However, the cultural norms often, constrained women from fully participating in economic activities, which are usually dominated by men. And as said, the following of what I'm going to share are some key points based on some of the recent studies I've done regarding challenges of female youth employment, and also some recent studies by the government regarding the labor force and the industry census. And unemployment in Bhutan, it's usually tied to the government systems, the private sector growth, and education systems' ability to, equip youth with necessary skills. One of the rising trend or the emerging trend is, I think, the school systems are really promoting entrepreneurial skills among, the young people in Bhutan. But however, most face the dilemmas of acquiring that practical skills independently. And what has been noticed is gender biasness is there in the education sector still persists, especially in the STEM areas. And one of the key issues that was highlighted was how women as working mothers struggle due to the lack of childcare facilities in workplaces. And despite the government's intervention on the extending maternity leave, there are still requirements for sustainable solutions that are needed to be in place. And one thing that really surprised us was also the impact of climate change on the rural women, which has they highlighted like the impact is quite significant, especially intensifying the unpaid household and care work burdens taken by women. For instance, they have shared, if I set an example, like, the rural women having to fetch water from due to the drying up of water sources, like having to walk longer distance, or even the health risks of family member having to tying up women as being the natural caregiver of the household. So they end up taking additional responsibilities when family members fall ill. So all these responsibilities is that women they limit their ability to engage in the economic or income generating activities. And something that highlights on the employment sector is the youth, especially the female. While the over the years, the gender gap in distribution of the registered job seekers in Bhutan has been declining. However, it still shows that there are more female, job seekers compared to male. So these disaggregated data kind of reveals that the female youth are more vulnerable, and especially due to a lot of limitations, education, training, opportunities, and even uh, one of the few of the women that I had met even did talk about, which was quite surprising, workplace discrimination. And but then the unemployment issues are something that makes them more susceptible to gender-based violence. And now, regarding the industry sector in Bhutan, some of the findings that was shared was that there are significant gender dynamics in the ownership of businesses, especially the sole proprietorship dominate the industry sector, where female ownership slightly surpasses the male. But however, the dynamic kind of shifts as the medium and large industries tend to have more it's more male dominant. And as the industry becomes bigger, that the ownership seems to be more of a male dominated sector. And the even the employment figures, which kind of highlights a stark gender imbalance, particularly in the contract and casual positions, where male workers outnumber females by more than 8 times. And there you see the disparity, where the persons with even persons with disabilities, which also reflect a gender disparity with male. In here, where male tends to have more numbers in the workforce, and majority of the industry proprietors in Bhutan with no formal education are women. And even the ownership, the types reveal a gendered pattern with, as shared, that male dominating most categories, except the non-formal, non-profit the sectors where employment trends, of female employment is much higher. And regarding, I think even the from some of the findings in these researches, while the challenges may be industry oriented, but then it gives a lot of significant impact on the women, where although the challenges may be related to access to market finance and getting skilled labor, but then policy issue has been highlighted as one of the severe challenge and the highly recommended for intervention. Others followed by the access to finance market and addressing skilled labor shortage. So these are like some perspective from the different findings on the gender related participation in economics or trade in Bhutan. But then based on the gender equality in trade policies and practices, what is crucial for ensuring that women and men equally benefit from economic opportunities. And in order to promote the equality, there is need to integrate gender perspective into trade policies. Especially trade agreements and policies should explicitly consider gender impacts. This involves conducting gender impacts assessment to understand how policies affect women and men differently, and incorporating measures to address any disparities. For instance, policies include specific provisions to support female-dominated industries or sectors where women are predominantly employed. And the next is like developing gender response trade facilitation measures, which can be done by simplifying custom procedures, as Ms. Selima has highlighted, and improving access to trade information can particularly benefit women entrepreneurs who face greater obstacles in these areas. And for example, like yesterday, the UNICEF's TINA website kind of it's a very assistive platform, and we feel that that possibly women entrepreneurs could also be trained in using similar platforms, or have a simplified platform for the women or the disadvantaged gender, and ensure equal access to trade resources. Women should have equal access to resources necessary for engaging trade, such as financing, technology, and training. And I believe that BIMSTEC, as an initiative, could be taken to mediate with government and organizations to play a role for providing targeted support to women traders, and ensure that trade support services are gender sensitive. And even initiate programs to support and mentor women entrepreneurs. The women entrepreneurs, as express, face unique challenges, including. Yes. Okay. I'll just highlight on the points. One is like a mentorship and networking programs, access to finance, capacity building, and access to finance. For example, like what if BIMSTEC, what the World Bank already has the Women Entrepreneurship and Financial Initiative. So something similar, if you could implement and tie up, then yeah, the rest I think we could discuss over tea. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Sorry for that. We can continue our talking. So Ms. Turing has shared the experience from the case of Bhutan. Very interesting. We can see a lot more detail about how we see disaggregate data. We can have think about like working mother, also the women in the rural area. She also mentioned from the policy. I think three of our speakers confirmed the same thing: gender perspective in terms of the policy making, and also in terms of training or equip our worker or the female worker here. Financing is one issues, and also how to access the market. So the custom, if it can be more simple, we can benefit all, both men and women. So thank you very much for sharing this experience. Next, we move to our last speaker, Ms. Nandita from online. So yep, if you're ready, please, you may have around like 5 minutes. Please, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it's a privilege and a pleasure to be present at this third Bay of Bengal Economic Dialogue. And I want to thank the organizers and all of those who are in the dais for having me here. And also my apologies not being able to join in right in the beginning in time because of some tech issues. But I have 5 minutes, so I'm going to be very, very brief. One, I would like to acknowledge that the speakers before me have actually covered very, very substantive point on issues why gender integration into this larger concept of trade entrepreneurship is critical. Research has said that bridging the gender gap in both employment and in enterprise can actually increase the per capita income of the Asia Pacific by 70%. Having had those data, we still are nowhere close to those spaces of integration. And UNIDO recent report in 2022 said, the amount of startup fund which are co-funded by men and women get a much lesser percentage of funding. So if men are getting 2.12 million, women are getting 662,000 US dollars only. And sorry, the women are getting only 935,000 US dollars. But when you look at returns for the 2.12 million that men are getting, the revenue returns somewhere around 660,000, 62 maybe. For the amount of investment that women are getting, which is 995, a fairly significant gap, the revenue returns are $730,000. So there clearly is a case that investing in women can actually increase the resources that countries, communities, and the world as a whole can generate with good business. However, there is a lot that would need to be done to be able to come to that. And I think the speakers before me have really spoken substantively on a lot of that. And Salima ji, it's a pleasure to see you after such a long time. I think since my days in UN Women, it's been a while we have met. Critical issues brought up by all the speakers. And I think where are the barriers? If every research, every documentation is showing that women need to be more involved because the results are significantly good, not just for women, but for the economy and the world growth itself. Why is it not happening? As an earlier speaker said, women are more involved in the smaller enterprise. Now, that's related to the level of fundings that enterprise gets. The larger the enterprise, the more formal sector funding, the more banking sector support, more financial norms you'll require, and lesser the women have access to those. Why do they have less access to those? One, I think our legal systems and our laws in the trade sector are not really conducive to women in these sectors, but also because I feel that in many a times we don't consider gender when we frame those laws. It's also sometimes an unconscious bias. Culturally, there are many conscious biases, but I think economically sometimes it's an unconscious bias, which we now need to substantively and clearly, target. I do think that to start off, the financial sector reforms really needs to have some proactive measures to encourage more women entrepreneurs to come in, probably give them the benefit of a startup and do the necessary handholding that is required, both from the taxation point of view, from filing returns, from investing. All of those are sectors where women have not traditionally had the knowledge and skills. So if we want to bring them to the mainstream, a conscious effort across countries where this is required would be done. The second thing I also feel is very important is we've talked about this, and we've talked about the gap in IT, and we know the technology gap, and we know that more and more industry development enterprise is driven by tech. One is giving women the understanding and knowledge of how to use tech, but more importantly, access to those techs. And I've talked about this before. I think when we talk about access to that, it's easy to say, oh yeah, here is an AI model that you should use to generate better business for your women, for your market. Here is how you can do it. But one thing we fail to understand: majority of the tech platforms or the tech backend measures that are created are again gender neutral or gender insensitive. We don't have enough women in the tech who will create tech to support women in enterprise. Because I think the understanding of what kind of tech would women know, like a speaker said, it's something as simple as how do I market my good? How do I protect my intellectual property right? How do I get into the Instagram or the TikTok to sell it without somebody actually undermining my business and stealing my ideas? Tech platforms need to be more conducive to responding to women's specific needs that actually can bring women together. The networks of women is absolutely essential. As Salima ji herself is in the Bangladesh Business Chambers of Commerce, I think we have really not invested in connecting women's business of chambers across, not just at the national level, but going down in each state to the macro, micro, and the meso level, because most of our women entrepreneurs are at the lower and probably the middle end of the system that we are targeting. And I think reaching out to those are going to be important. Second is, of course, the social cultural norms, and I'm not going to talk much about it except for two things, I think. I think we need to recognize more and more that getting women into the sector will require some substantive and conscious change by governments on issues related to the care economy, and specifically bringing this to the attention of this August gathering, because I think if the burden of care continues to fall on women, their ability to substantively engage in economic activities at the same level as men are going to not be possible. We have to take conscious decisions on what support we give in women entrepreneurs when we want them either as the labor force or or in the industrial entrepreneurial sector in the care segment. And there is a lot going, and I think in the paucity of time, I'm not going to get into detail, but it's a point worth considering. The other is the mobility challenge. I know, Sanimaji talked about the border checkpoints. We did a study on the gendered aspect of border checkpoint with Ikriar and Shataneja, who's a known expert in this. And we found similar things. One, of course, the border points are really not conducive to women. Forget about toilets, which are, just one of the very basic things. Even the people who man these ports are not sensitive to the issues that a women trader, a women entrepreneur would require. The whole language of communication is something that is not gendered and does not therefore encourage women and provide them the necessary sense of safety to be able to navigate these border points. Today, we are talking about much larger border points. We are talking about shipping points, the port points. The land borders are only for South Asia, and probably at some extent in Southeast Asia. But the larger, more tech-driven points of business also needs to have a conscious, clearly spelled out gender strategy that would actually encourage women to engage with these structures in a meaningful way as an entrepreneur. And without that happening, I think there's going to be a challenge. The mobility within states, within our own countries, is another challenge. Moving goods from one place to another, dealing with the Truckers Association, dealing with the market, mandis as we call them, or the places where large-scale wholesale goods are marketed, those challenges, export-import platforms. I think these are conscious issues that we have to really take and really, I think, country by country, region by region, really come out with a more cohesive plan. I don't think we can leave anyone behind in this whole journey. And I think that BIMSTEC, having taken it up, probably should put it as a core agenda in the coming years. Because if we do want to see that 70% increase in growth in GDP, which will mean a lot for the inclusive development of our countries, I think bringing women to the center of the table by addressing all these challenges of AI, financial sector reform, cross-border trade checkpoints, care, mobility, would have to be at the center of our own national agendas as critical, that would require improvement, that will require integration. And yes, time probably for us to think collectively so that we can have similar sets of norms and regulations that will make it conducive for women not to trade just within the border, but across the border. So I think in the interest of time and the fact that there is paucity of time and that we are going to have probably Q&A if we have the time, I'm going to stop my points here, finish my two things that I had to say. And I really want to once again thank everybody for having me in this forum. And I hope that going forward, we will have some more meaningful takeaways that we can all work on collectively to make this agenda a reality in our lifetime. Thank you so much. Namaskar.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nandita, for very insightful into the trade and gender in BIMSTEC. I think she mentioned very important and also practical as well. That can be the additional force and really move forward. Think about the network of women and how to encourage women to engage in those kind of business, IT, finance. Those are the key things that what we need also include this issue like gender perspective into the national agenda and how to think collectively as a region. So I think for our four speaker here, we can see the picture from the practical one into the policy level and also how to move forward as a solution, not only for each country, but also for the region as a whole. So I think we can see for the dimension for trade and gender for here. Since the time is already up. And I think for the coming session is one of the very important one. If you may excuse me that we can continue our discussion during the coffee break and then we come back for the next session. Thank you very much. And please give a round of applause for our speaker here and online. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the chair and the panelists. And after this, we're going to take a short break. Actually, it's not really a short break. We can take a break about 30 minutes. We're going to come back to the room by 11:30. But a short announcement that the last session it will take over from 11:30 to 1 p.m. So I could recommend you to have like a big break because we're going to stay in the room for another hour and we're going to have the late lunch after that. So enjoy the break.